Today, we're diving into the incredible story of one of history's most amazing engineering cultures, the Aztecs. We're going to explore how they built a massive empire on a foundation of pure, raw ingenuity, creating this magnificent world literally in the middle of a lake. So the big question is, how in the world did they pull that off? I mean, that's the central puzzle right there. It sounds basically impossible, doesn't it? But that is exactly what the Mexica people, the culture at the very heart of the Aztec Empire, actually did. And the answer reveals a level of planning and environmental engineering that is just, well, it's truly mind-blowing. And this is where our story really begins, in the absolutely magnificent city-state of Tenochtitlan. Now, this wasn't just some small settlement. It was the huge, sprawling capital of the Aztec Empire, built with incredible strategy on the western side of the vast, shallow lake Texcoco. And to really get a sense of the scale here, you have to understand that Tenochtitlan was a global powerhouse of its time. It was a bustling metropolis, a center of trade, politics, and religion that could go toe-to-toe with many of the great cities across the ocean in Europe. Okay, so having an amazing city is one thing, but keeping hundreds of thousands of people fed, that's a whole other challenge, especially when you're surrounded by water instead of nice, fertile fields. This is where that Aztec ingenuity really kicks into high gear. How did they solve this fundamental problem of survival? Well, they solved it with an agricultural marvel known as the Chinampa system. And you probably heard them called floating gardens. But get this, the reality is way more impressive and a whole lot more permanent. So what in the world is a Chinampa? Well, put simply, it's a man-made island. It's a small rectangular plot of land built from scratch specifically for farming. It was just a genius way to create fertile, farmable ground right where they needed it most, on the water. Okay, so here's the big misconception we have to clear up. These incredible gardens were not just some kind of raft drifting around on the lake. No way. They were solid, immovable extensions of the land, carefully constructed and anchored directly to the bottom of the shallow lake. And the construction process itself was just brilliant. First, they'd make a rectangular frame by driving these long wooden stakes deep into the lake bed. Next, they'd fill that area with layers of mud and plants from the lake itself, creating this unbelievably nutrient-rich soil. And then, for the finishing touch, they'd plant willow trees at the corners, and the roots of those trees would grow down and lock the whole structure in place. The result? A super fertile, self-irrigating farm that was so productive it could yield up to 7 harvests a year. 7! That kind of output is almost unheard of, even with all our modern technology. So, with a food source that's sustainable and that brilliant, the city itself could just explode into an urban marvel. Now that we've seen how they fed themselves, let's journey into the heart of Tenochtitlan and really appreciate its incredible scale. At its absolute peak, the city is estimated to have covered up to 13.5 square kilometers. Just try to picture that. A massive network of homes, huge markets, towering temples, and canals that were literally used as streets, all of it organized and built right on top of the water. And here's something really wild to think about. This ancient history isn't as far away as you might think. The historic center of modern-day Mexico City is built directly over the ruins of Tenochtitlan, on the exact same lake bed that the Aztecs transformed all those centuries ago. Now, right at the very center of this sprawling city was its sacred heart, the Templo Mayor. This was the main temple of the Mexica people, the physical and spiritual axis for their entire universe. But the Templo Mayor wasn't just one single pyramid. Its most unique feature was its twin pyramid design, which had 2 separate shrines at the very top. And this dual structure wasn't just for show. It represented a really core concept of their entire worldview. And this is where it all just clicks together. It brilliantly illustrates their idea of cosmic balance. One shrine was for Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, representing the dry season. The other was for Tlaloc, the god of rain and agriculture, representing the rainy season. The entire temple was a physical monument to this delicate balance between war and food, sun and water, that their whole civilization was built on. All right, so if the Templo Mayor was the hardware of the Aztec cosmos, what was the software? The operating system that ran everything. Well, to understand that, we need to look at one of the most important surviving manuscripts, the Codex Borbonicus. The Codex Borbonicus is an actual manuscript written by Aztec priests right around the time the Spanish arrived. This thing is the real deal. It's an invaluable, direct window into their world, spelling out the complex systems that governed every part of their lives. Inside this codex, we find a guide to the Tonal Puali, their sacred 260-day calendar. It details exactly which gods ruled over specific days and weeks, and it lays out all the complex rituals people needed to perform. This incredible document, which is now kept in Paris, wasn't just a record of the past. You have to understand, it was a practical, living guide, a user manual for aligning human life with the forces of the cosmos. So ultimately, we have to see this codex for what it was. It wasn't just a book of stories or myths. It was the master blueprint, the complex algorithm that scheduled religious festivals, predicted the future, and organized the spiritual life for millions of people. So when you step back and look at it all, from literally creating farmland out of a lake with the Chinampas to building a temple that balanced the entire cosmos, the Aztecs were absolute masters of engineering, both in the physical and the spiritual world. Their civilization was a stunning testament to human ingenuity. And it just leaves you wondering, right? What other incredible secrets of their world are still buried out there, just waiting to be rediscovered?